Guys, now that we have had a chance to review all three back to back, namely the new kid on the block, which is the Aprilia Rs 457, the 2024 Yamaha R3, and the kinda new Kawasaki Ninja 500, it's time finally for a showdown. So let's get right to it. So if we are to cut to the chase and pick the overall winner and the motorcycle which offers you the most value for money, it is undoubtedly the Aprilia Rs 457. Because the most powerful motorcycle in the segment, loaded to the teeth with tech, gets the best components, is arguably the best looking, and also is considerably cheaper than the R3 and the Ninja 500. And on top of that, it also has the capability to truly come up on top, because if you're looking for a motorcycle which is the sportiest in this class, it's hands down RS 457, because this is the closest you're gonna get to experience a proper race bike. First and foremost, the engine, the way it makes the power, the 270-degree crank has so much character, makes for a really involving ride. And then to back it up, you also have the handling, which has always been the standout feature of Aprilia. So the communication from the chassis, from the front end, is phenomenal. That really feeds your confidence to carry a lot of speed in the corner. And when you commit, you're only rewarded because the balance, the stability is brilliant. And just the mechanical grip that the Aprilia generates is very, very good. So Aprilia wins this battle hands down. Its only Achilles heel is of course the brakes, but which are an easy fix with the sintered pads. And considering Biber has been making sintered pads for the KTMs for so long, I'm sure you'll be able to find them quite easily, and they're also not going to be very expensive. Now that brings us to who comes second in this sportiness category, and it's actually quite close, because if you look at the new Yamaha R3, especially after getting the upside down forks, I think this is the best it's ever been in terms of riding dynamics. You have a lot more support when you're riding hard. You have really good feel from the front end, which means you can really push the bike confidently. You have really good tires in terms of the Dunlops to bank on. And in terms of braking, this is hands down the best of the three motorcycles here. But the problem is, if you put the R3 and the Ninja 500 on the track, the Ninja doesn't have the same fancy components, the brakes are not that great, and you get traditional forks instead of the upside down forks. So it's not as stable, it doesn't have the same amount of support. But it will still come out on top in terms of lap times on any racetrack because of that engine. The new engine, the 450cc engine, packs a lot more torque, a lot more power, which sees it definitely beat the R3 by a big margin, which is why in terms of sportiness, it's going to be the Aprilia Rs 457, followed by the Ninja 500, and then the Yamaha R3. And it's this very thing which actually works in the Ninja 500's favor, even when you're talking about the next segment, which is sports touring. Now, out on the highways, the Ninja thrives because of that engine. You have so much power, you have so much torque, which gives you the ability to always ride in a gear or two higher, which means even if you're cruising at 140 kilometers an hour, the engine is nice and settled. Yes, there are vibes, but that's only when you go even faster. Also, the fact that you can ride in a gear or two higher means you're also going to get better fuel economy. So from the 14-liter tank, you can expect a range of about 300 to 320 kilometers. Then to add to it, you have more upright ergonomics. The suspension is a little on the stiffer side, but not too bad. The seat, the saddle is not, again, the most comfortable, but it's definitely better than the one on the RS 457. And one of the most important factors that works in the Ninja's favor is the heat management. The engine does heat up, but the way the fairing has been designed, all that engine heat is directed away from the rider, which means that you don't really feel it even if you do get stuck in traffic, which is a big plus. This is exactly why the RS 457 comes second in this category, because on the engine front it's just as good, if not better. You have a much wider power band, you have a lot of torque on tap, but the seating position is a little more committed compared to the Ninja. Also, the windscreen creates a decent amount of buffeting, so you will probably need a taller windscreen from Aprilia's accessories for the RS 457. And also on the suspension front, it's a little better because it's adjustable both at the front and the back. The biggest problem is the heat and the way it's directed. So the engine doesn't really heat up too much, but it directs the heat straight onto your legs, which makes it not the most comfortable over longer distances, especially if you get stuck in traffic. And also the seat, I'm afraid, is worse than the Ninja 400 because it was not designed for the longer hauls. Again, here the R3 comes last. There's not much wrong with it. With the new suspension setup with the upside down forks, the ride quality, the balance between ride quality and sportiness is very much there. The engine is nice and peppy, but the vibes creep in earlier around 5000 RPM. They don't really settle down as much as the Ninja and the RS 457 in the higher revs. So the cruising speed on the R3 I found was a little bit less, around 125 to 130 at the most when the engine is nice and settled. The ergonomics are pretty good, they're quite upright. In fact, the seat height is quite low, and even then I fit on it just fine. You have decent amount of ground clearance, but again the problem is the heat. If you do get stuck in traffic, there's a decent amount of heat coming onto your legs, even though the engine doesn't really heat up too much. It's just the way the heat is directed straight onto your legs, which makes the saddle a little uncomfortable compared to the Ninja 500. This is also the same story you can repeat in the urban environment. So if you're looking for a bike which will do it all, then the Ninja 500 again has an advantage because of that engine, because of all of that torque in the city. Which means even in terms of tractability, it scores really high and the heat management is great. The RS 457, great again on the engine front, but heats up a lot. So that's a big problem and definitely not the best bet here for if you're looking at it mainly from a commuting perspective. And the same goes for the R3. It's mainly the heat. Even though all of these motorcycles are really quick on their feet, they are relatively light. The R3 is the lightest in class. The difference here is just the comfort, which seems to be a little bit better on the Ninja 500. Now these are all the rankings based on the capability of the motorcycles. But if I were given a choice, I would hands down go for the Aprilia Rs 457 because I'm okay and willing to live up with the heat, and I'm not really looking at that motorcycle as a city commuter. So when it comes to sports touring and when you want a quick dash in the mountains or to take it to the racetrack, that is the most capable. And again, if you look at the value for money proposition, it's an absolute no-brainer. With the Ninja 500, you're of course paying the most premium, but you can kind of justify it because of that new engine, which I have been most impressed with, because I've never experienced this on a Kawasaki Ninja. It has been very similar to the R3 in terms of you had to always rev the hell out of it to get the power out. But now with the new engine, with the torque, it has made the Ninja 500 a lot more versatile, and that's why I feel you can kind of justify the price, because another big thing which is working for the Ninja is the reliability and the after-sales service, because they have been around for so long. The same can be said also for the Yamaha R3. no doubts about the reliability and the after-sales service, but it's more to do with the fact that it's a much simpler motorcycle and you're asking for a lot of money for that motorcycle. It's definitely grown longer in the tooth. And especially now with the new emission norms, I think the same engine has lost a little bit of the spark because it doesn't have the same tractability, the same rideability, which made it such a versatile motorcycle in the BS4 trim. Also, not to forget, the R3 does not even get a slipper clutch, which is unheard of for a motorcycle which costs you that much money, especially when this technology is now even offered on 150cc motorcycles. And that clearly is a glaring miss on the R3. But there you go guys, that's my verdict on this fantastic Comparo. I genuinely think that we are living in the golden age of motorcycling because we have such fantastic options. And now thanks to Aprilia, we are also seeing that such a good motorcycle also doesn't have to carry such a hefty price tag if manufacturers take the plunge and decide to make the motorcycles here in India. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that this will convince Yamaha as well as Kawasaki to also take the plunge and make these motorcycles more accessible, because either way, honestly, you're not really going to go wrong.